Big show lined up for you today. As a matter of fact, as we always do on a Thursday, we're going to take a road trip today because the Colts and Broncos are set to tussle coming up on a later afternoon game this Sunday at Lucas Oil Stadium. We will go out to Denver and discuss. Matt Taylor will also join us, so we'll keep it close to home. And in the sake of making sure that we are getting all aspects, all sides of things, we talked Indiana earlier this week. We're going to talk a little Purdue football coming up in today's show. As a matter of fact, one of the heroes of their 2000 Rose Bowl team going to join us because that team will be honored this weekend at Ross-Ade Stadium. But I begin with this. Something happened on my way to work. Was driving to work and realized that I needed to stop for gas. This is obviously not unusual for anyone. And I stopped at the gas station, and there kind of was just this somber hue, if you will. Like there just was this kind of incredulous look on the face of people, and you could just feel this, I wouldn't say tension, but uncertainty in the air. And nobody really was saying much, but there was one guy sitting in his car, and we kind of made eye contact. And he looked up at me and said, and this is a true story, he looked up at me and said, "You know, we're actually on the same team." And I said, "You're right, we are." I didn't know him. He didn't know me. We really have no idea I have no idea this guy's family. I have no idea his socioeconomic background. I don't know. I didn't know anything about him. But there wasn't much more that needed to be said than simply, we're actually all on the same team. And I said, "You're right." And it made perfect sense. It made perfect sense based on the temperate of the world in general. And then I got to thinking about the fact that I work in sports. And I realized that, like, if you're going to go to Lucas Oil Stadium this Sunday and you're going to watch the Colts and the Broncos, or you're going to go to Ross-Ade Stadium and you're going to watch USC and Purdue, or you're going to go tomorrow night in Bloomington and watch Indiana and Indiana State, you can find the obvious answer in the fact that one group of people are rooting for the Broncos and one group are rooting for the Colts. One group are rooting for the Trojans. One group is rooting for the Boilermakers. One group's rooting for the Sycamores. One group's rooting for the Hoosiers. But in those circumstances, everyone in the building is a fan of college football, or everyone in the building is a fan of the National Football League. And the story of the guy at the gas station was not today. It was 24 years ago today. And it's something that I'll never forget, because on September the 11th, I was going to work, and I didn't even know if I needed to go to work. I, like everybody, had watched what took place, but I worked at a television station here in Indianapolis, and I remember calling Dave first, and Dave saying, "I don't think we're going to have a sportscast tonight." And, you know, the droplets of uncertainty were all coming in before all of a sudden it became this really rainstorm of question and doubt and just everything that took place in the immediacy following it. But in the initial reaction, it was, I don't think we're going to do a sportscast tonight. Well, we didn't end up doing a newscast for like a week because it was all national coverage, understandably so. And nobody knew how to react. Nobody knew what to say. Nobody knew what the protocol was. We had never been through this before, at least in this generation, in this soil, in this country. In that regards to civilians in a civilian life. And I did not know anybody who lost their life 24 years ago today. I have always, there is a a phone call that took place where a girl and a woman, I say girl, a woman by the name of Melissa Dwight called 911 and wanted to make sure she knew her fate, and she wanted to make sure that the 911 operator let her mother know that she loved her. And I've always felt like that was a representation for those of us that didn't personally know someone. We could all identify with that and connect with Melissa Dwight. And I always think about her and her mother. I have no idea if her mother is still with us, lives in New York. I have no idea. But the point that I'm making, long-winded, is this. During that time, I went into Channel 6 because we all went to whatever our comfort zone was or wherever we felt we needed to be. A lot of people just went home. I remember my dad just showing up. I was living at my parents' house at the time, and before I went to Channel 6, my dad just coming home. Everybody just immediately went to wherever they felt they needed to be on this date 24 years ago. And eventually, as a people, and eventually as a community, and eventually as a country, we began to heal en masse. And part of how we began to heal en masse was through sport. And I remember one of the first sportscasts that we did, Dave First going out and doing a story on two high school football teams that were scheduled to play and obviously did not play on the week after 9/11. And instead of playing in a football game, the two coaches got the two teams together to go out and do community work within the community. And so we did a story on that because that was kind of our soft re-entry into talking about sports when we just didn't know when the timing was right to do so. And the reason I bring that up today, I don't think I need to go into or elaborate on the political current and climates of today and the horrific visuals of that in terms of today's era, other than to say that just like then, I now sometimes wonder and am curious about what is the proper protocol of what needs to be said. And in that era, 24 years ago, it was sport that unified us. It was sport to a lot of people that allowed us to reacclimate back into the American culture. It was the World Series and President Bush throwing out the first pitch. It was the World Series and Ray Charles singing America the Beautiful. It was sport oftentimes that brought us back into the American culture and lifestyle when we needed it and were trying to wade through what the proper protocol was. And when I was thinking about today, what would be appropriate to address in regards to events yesterday, in regards to the visuals of a young person losing their life over what we can speculate but not concretely know was politically motivated, like then, I didn't know today what was the proper protocol. And I determined and decided, and I asked for forgiveness if it's the wrong approach. But what I decided was that, in fact, when these times come, it is sport that allows people to come together, find similarity, and find some course of normality and joy in a world that otherwise can sometimes provide neither. And so, therefore, I think the best course of action today is to simply say, we at this radio station, myself, are well aware of not only what today represents historically speaking, but what today represents currently speaking, and we do our best to venture through it by finding the common ground of sport, and that's what we'll discuss today. And we do so by openly saying that the beauty of it all when it comes down to it, that I hope people can remember, is that life is about the same as those football stadiums, where sure, you can look at the T-shirt of the person cheering on the other side of the aisle, but in reality, you are both fans of the same sport. And in this country, we can look at things today and realize those things, but also do so by knowing that we are fans of and in the same arena of the greatest country in the world. And that's what allows us to today talk about sports. And that's what we're going to do. And we'll begin by doing so talking about the Colts and the Denver Broncos. Brandon Cristal will join us about 20 minutes from now, just under that, as a matter of fact, to preview what takes place. And there has been plenty that has been said, obviously, about the quarterbacking situation, the quarterback position. How about the fact, I saw this, Eddie Garrison. It's been a while since I've heard the name David Carr.
Okay.
David Carr was the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft taken by the Houston Texans out of Fresno State. As a matter of fact, I believe David Carr was the first ever draft selection of the Houston Texans. He was the very first Texan, essentially. Yeah, they had an expansion draft, and Steve McKinney, for example, was drafted away from the Colts as an offensive lineman and went to Houston. But David Carr was, I think a lot of people thought David Carr was going to be a precise rhythm quarterback, and in addition to that, a quarterback that had some mobility about him, and Houston was very intrigued by what he could do, and they went out and they drafted him, and then guess what happened when they drafted him? They had nothing to support him. And he spent, I have always said, I broke into the Astrodome during the IndyCar race in Houston several years ago, well documented, well talked about, well stated, and I went through the Astrodome by myself and had a chance to sit there and evaluate and assess and look at every single inch of the Astrodome. And it was awesome. And right next to the Astrodome is NRG Stadium, which is the current home of the Houston Texans. It's mammoth, it's massive, and it's amazing how when you look at it in comparison to the Astrodome, especially when you fly over it, it's the size of Lucas Oil Stadium. But the Astrodome was the 7th wonder of the world when I was a kid, and the Bad News Bears play there, and Evel Knievel and Lou Alcindor get his eyes scratched there and all of that, and the Astrodome's this big, famous, historic venue, and it's right next to NRG Stadium, and now today it literally looks like the old Lawrence Central High School gymnasium that was round on 56th Street and sitting next to NRG Stadium. NRG Stadium is massive. And NRG Stadium, if you look at the lights of it, David Carr is the one guy that can actually tell you exactly how many lights are in NRG Stadium, because he basically sat on his back and was able to count every single one of them, because he was absolutely thrashed and throttled as a quarterback and never got any sort of feel about playing the quarterback position, because he was constantly under duress as the Houston Texans quarterback. But David Carr likes Daniel Jones. David Carr, who is a player that I would assume has experience, has knowledge, has the trained eye to be able to see good and bad situations for a quarterback because he's been through it. David Carr came out and said, I think Daniel Jones has a little bit of a Peyton Manning tendency about him. A Peyton Manning tendency about him. Now, in this town, you take anything that resembles Peyton Manning tendency, right? And I think what he is saying is this, and you got to look kind of above and beyond just the nuance of what is being said. Yeah, it's easy to critique that, but and say like that's a totally insane comment, right? But when you look at what David Carr had to say, he made some great checks at the line of scrimmage. He was really on it. He said this on the Dan Patrick Show. It was funny because he looked like Peyton. You get in the same uniform, you're in that building, he's got the same mannerisms. I'm going to follow and study Indy the rest of the year, he said. Now, David Carr is a guy that when he looks at that is probably saying to himself, I know a quarterback and I can recognize when a quarterback is in a good situation, because he was not. And I think when he looks at it and says, he says, hey, I get excited about it because he's up there and he's making checks. He's moving guys around. He has the ability, like Peyton Manning did, to recognize things. But I think David Carr recognizes that Daniel Jones also is put into a situation right away that is advantageous for him as opposed to the one that is challenging for a quarterback. And Jones, credit to the Colts. Credit to Chris Ballard. Chris Ballard preached and talked about the fact that he wanted an offensive line that was in the trenches going to win the battles. He wanted depth of playmakers at receiver. And that took a while. That absolutely took a while. But he wanted that depth, and I think they have it now. With Pittman and Downs. And, even A.D. Mitchell made a play, right? Even A.D. Mitchell. He was at the beginning of the Soul Asylum runaway train video for a long time there because he was missing, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's A.D. Mitchell, right? A.D. Mitchell made a play. And then you have Jonathan Taylor. It goes without saying there, we know what a weapon that is. And then we've talked about it a lot in the form of Tyler Warren and who and what Tyler Warren is. There are just so many areas that I think that they have put Daniel Jones in the best situation. And as I talked about yesterday, I just think Shane Steichen looked at all of the resources that were given to him by Chris Ballard and had to determine which quarterback he felt like not only could best benefit from those resources, but which quarterback can best benefit those resources themselves. And he went with Daniel Jones. And does this mean, and I'm going to be very curious when we talk to Brandon about this, whether or not Denver presents the kind of, defensive challenge that we want to see Daniel Jones up against. Is Miami a good defense? I mean, Miami looks like a dumpster fire. Can we truly assess and evaluate where the Colts are based on what Miami threw at them? They look like they were like Keystone Cops out there. So I think a better test this week. And, Eddie, correct me if I'm wrong in this. You, Eddie Garrison.
Okay.
You do the pre- and post-game shows for the Indiana Fever, correct?
That is accurate, yeah, for now, yeah.
When they are playing West Coast games, for example, you're up here a little bit later, right?
That is correct, yes.
And then you get up in the morning and you come in here and you get your chai tea and whatever else, right? And you got to wake yourself up.
Or I get my Java House peel and pop pod.
Peel and pour pods, baby.
Whatever, peel and pour, peel and pop, yeah.
I'm going right here.
Pop those puppies in there.
So you got to wake yourself up. If, in fact, now, do we know yet? We still don't know who the Fever are playing or when, correct?
We will find that out tonight. Okay. There's a lot of things that could happen.
Would you say, when's the last time you, Eddie Garrison, there's a reason I'm asking this as it relates to this weekend and the Colts. When is the last time you went out, and I know that you and Olivia, your girlfriend, when's the last time you guys went out and just said, we're going to paint the town red? We're going to go out. We're staying out late night. We're hitting Tiki Bob's. I'm going to take my shirt off and do some dancing. We're going to go to 8 Second Saloon. I'm going to ride the mechanical bull. We're just going to tie one on, go out to dinner, stay out late night, and have a big night.
It's oh boy, probably April if I had to guess. It's been that long.
It's been that long.
Well,
for me, I'm like, I don't know, probably like
here's the
2005.
Thing, Jake. I don't know how much of the listeners know. She works nights, so she works Sunday nights, and then I work, weeknights, sometimes weekend nights because of Pacers and Fever. So it kind of makes things challenging sometimes to paint the town red.
This is my assignment for you, young Jedi. You ready?
Okay.
I think you should do it Saturday night. I think Saturday night, you and this town, you should go out and just tie one on. Have at.
Funny
Have
you
fun.
mentioned that because that was discussed yesterday.
What's that?
We discussed doing that yesterday.
Yeah. Now, here's why. For the entire city, here's why. You could sleep in Sunday, right?
Oh, yeah.
I thought when the schedule came out, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I was under the impression when the schedule came out that every single game was a 1 o'clock game. Right? This is not a 1 o'clock game on Sunday, right?
Nope, 4 o'clock. They have a couple. I think they have an 8 o'clock. That's the Monday night against San Francisco. And then they have another 4 o'clock start, maybe two others because they're playing the AFC West this year and the NFC West.
So tie one on, baby. 4 o'clock start, Colts and Broncos. And Brandon's going to join us later in the program to talk about it. You do anything fun last night?
What did I do last night? No, I did not do anything fun. Just kind of relaxed at the house. What about you?
The same. I had, and for those that are curious, and I realize that list of people would be probably just Eddie, but if you're watching on the YouTube chat right now, and we thank you for doing so.
Wait. The what? There you go.
The YouTube chat, because nobody beats the Wiz.
You got to make that little smile and
you
smirk.
may or may not notice that I have a bandage, and there is nothing in life that I hate more than needles.
I noticed you had a bandage on your thumb as well the other day, and I was concerned.
Well, I'm on the thinners, and if I get a paper cut, then all of a sudden it becomes Old Faithful. But so here's the thing. and I want to make very clear for everybody with this for Franciscan Health. $49 heart scan at Franciscan. It is non-invasive. It is very easy to do. I today had to go in for a heart stress test. This was kind of a routine check, but you go in, and so I knew that I was going to go in. They were going to put wires on me. I was going to get on a treadmill, and then once you get your heart rate to a certain level, then they immediately take you off the treadmill, and you've got to lay on a table, and they do imaging of your heart itself. The two things about this, there were only two things about this that were troublesome. The first is when they first laid me down on the wires and the girl was getting everything set up, I hear this. And I'm like, what is that noise? That is disgusting. What's that disgusting noise? And she's like, oh, that's the sound of the blood going through your heart. Okay, I didn't need to hear that. Then she says, oh, and by the way, I forgot to tell you, in order to do this, we have to actually do an IV on you. Now, Eddie, I got news for you. Me and needles, not a good mix.
Really?
I am not a fan of needles in any way, shape, or form. But you got to do what you got to do, and so therefore they gave me the IV, and I still have the bandage on my arm, and so that is the reason for that. If you are wondering, thank you for your concern, but that is the reason. So did the stress test, and I want to encourage everybody, if you have not had a $49 heart scan, go ahead and do so also, because that is very easy. It does not have the sound effects nor the needle that go into it, so you are all good in that regard. Purdue this weekend is going to honor their 2000 Rose Bowl team. That is because, if your quick math is working like mine, that tells you that it has been 1/4 century, believe that or not, 25 years, since Purdue went to the Rose Bowl, and they're going to honor that team coming up this weekend in their game against USC. How weird is it to think that, back when in the Rose Bowl, and I know that it was Purdue playing Washington in the Rose Bowl in 2000, but back in the day, when you thought about USC, you thought if there is a Big Ten team, it would be in the Rose Bowl that would give them the best chance to square off, because that's how it worked back then in the Pac-10 and Big Ten championship matchups. It was Washington, not USC in 2000, but it will be USC, this weekend, and that is a Big Ten game. And they will be honoring the 2000 team, the guy that made the play, and there were a lot of great plays, a lot of them, in that 2000 season for Joe Tiller's Purdue Boilermakers. But they're facing Ohio State. They won, I believe, at that point 2 in a row. And they're looking to punch their ticket to the Rose Bowl, but they're down against Ohio State late in the game. We all know how great Drew Brees is. We all know the accuracy of Drew Brees, the clutch play of Drew Brees, all of it. And it was on display full right there in the play known simply, according to Brent Musburger, or because of Brent Musburger, as the Holy Toledo play. Drew Brees to Seth Morales that put Purdue into the Rose Bowl, and Seth Morales is going to join us today. He will be there coming up on Saturday. He is one of the players that will be honored. There are a number of them, and we'll get the full list of those that are going to be there on Saturday. He's going to join us 2 o'clock on the show. That's 30 minutes after Rob Blackman of the Purdue Radio Network will join us on today's program, and Matt Taylor, the voice of the Colts, will join us at 2:30 today. So a full slate. We might even mix in some phone calls as well. We didn't do that yesterday, and perhaps we should have. As always, the text line, 239-1070, 317 area code, obviously. 317-239-1070 if you want to text us during the course of the show, or, of course, on my personal cell phone as well. But when we come back, he is a friend of the program. It is a road trip. Colts and Denver going to be here on Sunday, but we're going to go to Denver to talk to Brandon Costello, and we're going to do it in 5. I'll tell you what, I'm doing a service to folks here. I'm doing a service to folks because we are letting you go for free here to Denver, Colorado as part of our Thursday road trip. And I don't know if, and I only know this because Shannon and I are going to Denver for a weekend in October to go see Paul McCartney. Airfare right now to Denver, not inexpensive. I don't know what happened, but airfare to Denver specifically, like through the roof. But, Eddie, nonetheless, are you ready to put your tray in the upright position and fasten your seatbelt? We're on our way to Denver. Brandon Cristal joins us now on the program. Of course, a regular here, if you will, on Query & Company. Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing good, Jake. My only thought is that fall break here starts that weekend, but that would be flights out of Denver, and maybe it's fall breaks around the country. Folks want to come, or they want to see Paul McCartney, maybe. I'm going to be in London because the Broncos play the Jets the night before that Sunday the 12th, and I think that concert's on the 11th at Coors Field, where they used to have Major League Baseball, but these days the Rockies play there.
Yeah, what is, by the way, before we get to the Broncos, man, what in the world happened to the Rockies? They're terrible, right? They're the worst team in baseball, right?
By a long shot, when you never get creative with how you handle your management, and since Dan O'Dowd got here in '99, they've had now 26 straight years of a vertical line. So Dan O'Dowd was seated by one of his underlings, a guy named Jeff Bridich, who ran it for a while. He did the Nolan Arenado deal, but then also traded Arenado. And then after him, a guy named Bill Schmidt, who was a longtime scouting director that came with O'Dowd. He is now the GM. A lot of people think he won't survive the year. But when you never get any thoughts from outside the building, and your argument is, well, other teams, you bring in someone from the outside, other people that have worked at other teams, they don't know how to win at altitude. I say, well, you've got 40 wins. You also do not know how to win at altitude. You're going to have 100 losses for 3. So any idea can't be worse. It can be as bad, but it can't be worse. And so they're not going to be the worst team in the history of baseball, but they're not much better. Got a couple of young pieces like all major league teams seem to have. But no, they've played hard since the break, but they're just not very good. And I don't know what will say that, even with them drafting Matt Holliday's younger son, Ethan, this past June. But it is a cool place to see a game. It's a great place to see a game. And depending on where your seats are for McCartney, it's a cool place to see a concert. I just hope you're not behind home plate necessarily, because you'll be very far from the stage.
I think it's at, you know what, I guess you're right. It's at Coors Field as opposed to Invesco or the Mile High or whatever they call it these days.
Right.
But Brandon Cristal, by the way, our guest, BK Denver Sports on the X Post Twitter, and he is the host and reporter, assistant regional manager for Guerrilla Sports, talking about Denver.
Assistant to the regional manager.
What's that?
Just like Dwight Schrute from.
You're the assistant and regional manager. Come on, you're George Costanza here, Brandon.
Jake, do you smell his qualifications?
That's right. You're the assistant to the assistant manager. Okay, Brandon, let's get to this. The Colts looked really good in week 1, and there is optimism here in Indianapolis, but they also played Miami, and week 1 overreaction. We have no idea who teams are through week 1. But now they go and they take on Denver. I had said I thought this was an important 2-game stretch for the Colts because theoretically these are two teams that are going to be thought to be around the same area within the conference where the Colts are going to be in November or December if they're not divisional winners and the wild card is in play. What is the strength of this Denver Broncos team that can challenge Indianapolis?
Well, certainly it's their defense. And I think when I talked to you, 6 weeks ago or so, right around start of training camp, or maybe it was longer than that because you had the race coming to town. So whenever it was, a couple of months ago, we talked about the defense, and they came to play. And Sunday, they've already racked up 6 sacks coming off a season where they had 63 as a team to lead the NFL. 6 different players got to the quarterback. They actually lost the turnover battle. Teams that won the turnover battle, Sean Payton told us on Wednesday, were 8-1. The Broncos, because of Bo Nix throwing a couple of ill-advised passes, not that it's ever advised, although every now and then I guess a good pass can get tipped up or broken up. But some ill-advised passes, especially the second interception, wasn't very good. And if you go back and watch that game, and I don't know how many Colts fans saw it, he had about 2 or 3 in the first half that also could have been intercepted that just weren't. And then he gave up a fumble on a strip sack, something that he didn't do at all as a rookie and didn't do in college. He does protect the ball pretty well. But they lost the turnover battle nonetheless. Every time they had short field, they held the Titans to 3 or less. And so they gave up just 4 field goals. And so you're good up front, although we don't know what the expectation is for Dre Greenlaw, who didn't play this past week. John Franklin Myers, defensive lineman, missed practice yesterday, but I was told by someone I trust that it's no big deal, and so maybe he will be in there, one of the big men up front in that rotation. But then on the back end, adding Talanoa Hufanga, who as Bo Nix pointed out yesterday, I think he had every tackle in the first quarter. He is as good as advertised when healthy, and there's a reason he was All-Pro a couple years ago with the Niners. So adding him to a secondary that already has the best defensive player in football, and Pat Surtain Jr., who gave up no catches on 34 pass coverage routes. They only threw his way once, but it's a good day of work. And they're good kind of across the board with the first-round pick and Barron that plays in the nickel and can play outside, McMillan, who had the strip sack late of Cam Ward, and then Riley Moss, who a lot of folks in the Big Ten remember because we certainly noticed white cornerbacks, and I always had a couple good ones, but Riley's played really well and had a great game in the opener. So it's all about their defense, keeping them in the game. Can their offense make enough plays?
Brandon, the defense itself, Brandon Cristal is our guest talking about the Broncos. You know, in Daniel Jones, what Shane Steichen did really well, I thought, in week one for Indianapolis was run an offense and call plays that catered towards Daniel Jones, getting him in rhythm a little bit, and really featuring Tyler Warren, their tight end, who's going to be a really good player for Indianapolis. But defensively, does Denver run a defense that is really aggressive? Is Daniel Jones going to see a lot of different stunt looks, and are they going to see a lot of blitzes, or is it more just simply locked down like cover-type defense?
No, I think that that's kind of Vance Joseph's calling card is how many different exotic looks can he give you and how many different stunts, twists, games up front can the D linemen, and, they're led by Zach Allen, who just got a new contract extension coming off a year where it wasn't Chris Jones. It wasn't another interior lineman. He was the defensive lineman who had the most QB pressures, racked up 8.5 sacks. He's really a straw that stirs the drink there, but I mentioned JFM, DJ Jones up front, and their backups are really aggressive too. So they come after you a bunch of different ways. Like I mentioned, McMillan had that strip sack. I mean, he's 5'10" on his best day, 185 pounds. And they'll send a corner from a corner blitz when you don't expect it to be coming. And so that's kind of been one of Vance Joseph's strong suits. I think he gets that a lot from his time around Wade Phillips in Houston. And so I think that it will confuse Daniel Jones if it works the way they want it to. And one other thing, too, as it relates to Daniel Jones, he's really close with Davis Webb. And I don't know how many people know this. I asked Sean Payton about it yesterday, and he tried to downplay it. But Davis Webb, because Sean was the one that told us this story, on Fridays, at least that last season that Webb was with Daniel in New York in 2022 when they made the playoffs, Davis would take Daniel to the indoor for the Giants and go through the game plan and walk through it with him like he was a coach. Now, Davis is the son of a coach. He steps off the practice field. We're in that same season, or off the playing field. He started that final regular season game because the Giants were locked into their playoff spot, so they gave Daniel Jones the day off. And Davis started that game and then immediately became the Broncos quarterbacks coach, jumping a couple levels that most coaches have to go through from quality control and other areas before you become a quarterbacks coach. But so Davis Webb has as good a knowledge of Daniel Jones probably as anyone, and saw Daniel when he was at his best before we saw what we saw last Sunday. That doesn't mean that he'll be able to relay everything, because Shane Steichen's offense is obviously different than what Daboll ran. But you have somebody that at least knows what what Daniel Jones' tendencies are, and so it'd be interesting to see how he does relay that to Vance Joseph. We're going to talk to VJ today, and we talk to the coordinators. I'm sure he'll downplay it as well, but that doesn't mean that Davis isn't sitting in there in a game plan meeting with him on Tuesday to go through things that he saw Daniel do well and say, we need to keep him out of this and try to make him do that.
So Davis Webb, of course, is the passing game coordinator, offensive coordinator for the Broncos and quarterbacks coach. He's kind of like the assistant to the regional manager, basically. But having said that, Brandon, he's working now with Bo Nix. So in conclusion, on the offensive side of the ball for Denver, Bo Nix now has taken what sort of step here over the course of his time since he has, been working with Sean Payton, and what sort of threat offensively does Denver present to the Colts?
Well, I think it's yet to be determined. If you were to ask me what kind of step he's taken so far, I'd say sideways. Can't really say backwards. They won. They scored 2 touchdowns. Those interceptions weren't good. You saw a couple of really good throws, especially to Cortland Sutton, not just on the touchdown, but on a early kind of bootleg action. a couple good throws, one to his old college teammate Troy Franklin and Evan Ingram. And so, and early on, he did what he did last year. In the first quarter, he targeted 8 receivers, and other than the third running back that didn't catch either of the passes thrown to him, one he had to catch on a screening miss, the other would have gotten him killed had Bo put it on the numbers by a safety coming across was good. It sailed out of bounds in the end zone. But he was 7 for, hit 7 different guys, and that's what he did great last year was spread the ball around. Even though he looked at Cortland Sutton the most, he was able to spread it around. Now, the one thing they did in the second half, they didn't do in the first half, was run the football. The numbers are a little skewed because rookie R.J. Harvey had a 50-yard run, and J.K. Dobbins scored on a 27-yard touchdown run. But they can just stay committed to running the football in the first half. That'll help Bo Nix because that'll help keep the defense honest, if you will. And one thing Sean said, and Sean loves to make excuses to protect Bo. He said there were too many RPOs, and that's on him because Bo made the check to the pass. He's like, we need more run-to-run options. And he's like, so that's on me as a play caller. And there may be some truth in that. But at the same time, Bo has to know that running the ball, even if it's not for a lot of yardage because of the look you're getting, will still keep the defense thinking, oh, they're going to keep trying to run it. So can he improve from what we saw as a rookie? Absolutely. And if he doesn't, then the Broncos won't be talking about a postseason. But I just can't say that he's made huge progress other than having a much better understanding of the offense. That's something he's talked about throughout the offseason. He talked about it with, I think, Chase Daniel and Diana Rossini when they were here. He said that last year he just kind of memorized everything, and now he really understands all of it.
By the way, Brandon, Jalen texts in the show that says, let Brandon know that Indy deserves a Major League Baseball team more than Denver. I don't know that I totally agree with that, but I will say Shannon's nephews, who are pretty big Rockies fans, they grew up in Denver, they have told me on numerous occasions their frustration is because the stadium is so cool and because the games are fun in terms of the non-baseball aspect of it, they're like, yeah, the Rockies don't have to spend money because everybody goes to the games regardless. Fact or fiction?
Yeah. No, total fact. The numbers are down a little this year. At least they were early in the year. Now, again, they've played better. They've played better ball of late, and you get the Dodgers coming in a couple times, and that's going to be cool. And the Yankees came to town as well this year. So those are going to always be big numbers. Same with the Cubs. They had a sellout two Saturdays ago. But yeah, it's the best bar in town. We actually have a T-shirt on our Gorilla Sports website. If you go to gorillasports.net, it's a purple T-shirt with a silhouette of Coors Field because we don't label it Coors Field, licensing issues. And it says best bar in Denver or best bar in town. And it's my favorite shirt of all the shirts we've made because it's true. On a Saturday night, a Friday night, Thursday, whatever it is, you can go. Baseball is only 2.5 hours now or less thanks to the pitch clock. And then that's how you start your evening. And it's a great place to see a game. You can walk around the whole stadium. So that's as misleading as anything else. Like, oh, fans are still coming. So as long as it's packed, we don't need to put a winner on the field. No, they're not trying to lose. They're just not doing a good job of figuring out how to try.
They're just not trying to win, right? They're not trying to lose. Yeah. They're just not trying to win. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I don't know how you fix it until you really shake things up. Yeah, they fired Bud Black. It wasn't Bud Black's fault that he had a AAA team at best or a bunch of AA players that aren't ready to be major leaguers or even 4A players, But they're going to have to, I think, hire a new manager because I don't think Warren Schaefer will keep the job. But they need a new president of baseball ops to come in, someone that's worked other places, that has different ideas, and can just shake things up a bit from the top down, through every part of the farm system and try to cultivate the players they have and maybe make some trades, with some of these young players to get more young prospects to really grow something.
Brandon, we appreciate the time as always, man. Safe travels, and certainly safe travels over to London. That'll be cool when you get to do that for the Broncos. But appreciate the time as always.
Thanks. Will I see you at the game Sunday?
I will be there, yep.
All right. Well,
I'll be there, and we will sit there. We can commiserate in the press box and solve all the world's problems. How's that?
Sounds great, Jake. I appreciate it. Thanks
I appreciate it. Brandon Cristal, our friend out in Denver with Gorilla Sports. By the way, speaking of assistant to the regional manager, there is one guy that was once the assistant to the commissioner that now is in charge, and perhaps he needs an assistant because he said something yesterday that made you go, what? I'll let you know what that is and why it is an ongoing PR, not nightmare, but just makes you shrug your shoulders. We'll elaborate next. Eddie mentioned it yesterday. We are and I'm just going off the top of my head, 6 weeks away from the NBA, somewhere in there.
Preseason starts, I think, in a month, yeah.
And I know again, it's so interesting because with the Pacers, and maybe I'm the only one that does this. Maybe I'm the only one that, when I think about the season, has to then stop and remind myself there's no Tyrese Halliburton and there's no Miles Turner. There's just, I still am, I'm almost on this high, if you will, from the fact that the finals and let's get right back to it and this is awesome. And it's been obviously it goes without saying, such a short offseason, based on what we're used to, that you get this turnaround and then you stop and you have to temper your expectations because you're like, oh, okay, that's right, I forgot. Halliburton, even though he looks good in his rehab, is not going to be on the floor, and Turner is now in Milwaukee, and it just changes things a little bit.
The preseason home opener a month from today.
Preseason, right?
Yeah, preseason home opener. Yes.
So Adam Silver, though, when it comes to, and this is one of the things that is...
And exactly 6 weeks from opening night for the Fever. Or not the Fever, the Pacers.
One of the things that is becoming more challenging is, and I think this is true for everyone, and I totally understand that if you have always been used to or accustomed to or have known no different than, streaming options and bundling packages. I mean, Eddie, we one day on the air were trying to figure out, I don't remember which one it was I was discussing, but I was mentioning that my cable now has gone from, cable to a streaming thing. I mean, they literally just came in and said, here's your box, here you go. And now all of a sudden I've got 1,000 channels, which is cool. But it's also a little overwhelming because I'm like, I don't know where stuff is half the time.
It's awesome, and totally awesome.
We were discussing whether or not, ESPN Plus also gets you Disney and, et cetera.
Yep.
And it became almost a who's on first conversation.
It definitely did.
And I think that when you talk about the NBA, and I get it, the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, all of them, Major League Soccer, every sport is constantly trying to appeal to a younger audience for the obvious reasons, for long-term sustainability of your product. I get it. And I think even people who have become accustomed to or known no different than streaming services and bundling and buying different apps, it becomes confusing at times. And let me give you an example. I go now, one of the things that I do each week is I lay out for my dad, for example, where every game is of the teams that he likes. Each Sunday I sit down and I go, okay, Dad, here's your weekly television schedule. The Cubs are on these days. On Wednesday, these games are on. On Thursday, these games are on. Now, the Cubs are fairly easy because most of their games are simply marquee. But he is also, for example, a huge fan of the Fever. That becomes a little more challenging because there are a number of different places where they can be found. And so I'll say, well, on this, this night it's actually on this channel, then it's on this channel, then it's on this channel. Adam Silver recently was discussing the television viewership of the NBA, and when asked about the challenge of basically not having it be readily available for all teams, but for some teams being on an a la carte app or a bundled app and whatever else, here's what Adam Silver had to say.
There's a huge amount of our content that people can essentially consume for free. I mean, this is very much a highlights-based sport. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, you name it, any service, the New York Times for that matter, to the extent that your content is not behind a paid firewall. There's an enormous amount of content out there. YouTube, by another example, that is advertising-based that consumers can consume.
Here's the problem with that comment. If you are the Indiana Pacers, you are the Minnesota Timberwolves, you're the Denver Nuggets, whatever it might be, part of your partnership with your broadcast partners are that now people are having to pay to watch the games, right? And, I sound like Herm Edwards there. You play to win the game. You pay to watch the game. And that's fine. And I get it. And the Pacers last year had the kind of run where, this city fell in love with them, and people are like, man, I can't wait to watch Pacer games. And it brought people together. But what you have right there is the commissioner of the NBA saying something that everything is about business partnerships. Everything is about sponsorships. And right there, I think he might have misspoke, and he might have some splaining to do. And I will explain exactly that when we come back. And again, coming up on the program still, Rob Blackman, about 35 minutes from now, Seth Morales talking Rose Bowl 2000 and the reunion for that team coming up this Saturday at Ross-Ade. That's going to be at 2 o'clock. Matt Taylor at 2:30 as well here on The Fan. Back into Colts Broncos here in just a second. A couple of minutes, actually, because there are a couple of other stories that really had caught my ear and eye. And I want to get back into this Adam Silver explanation. So he was doing a press conference after the annual NBA meeting of the Board of Governors. I don't know if Mike Braun was there or not. But the discussion, there are a lot of things going on right now in the NBA. One of them is the questionable nature, and I'm using air quotes there, of Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers and whether or not there wasn't, kind of under-the-table things that took place in terms of salary cap and getting underneath the salary cap and getting too creative with independent people or businesses paying Kawhi Leonard. Those are things the NBA is going to take a long, hard look at. But one of the questions that he was asked was that question about the cost and the increased cost of watching the NBA. And the best way to say it or explain it, I guess, would be this. I work, for example, in the world of IndyCar. And in IndyCar, NASCAR, whatever it may be, partnerships and sponsorships are so incredibly important. You are grateful for any company that comes along to sponsor a race team or the broadcast team or whatever it may be. And you are constantly aware of making sure that you are doing what is best for your partners and your sponsors and appeasing. And when I say appeasing, I don't mean like disingenuously. I mean naturally making sure that you are tying in the product name or the sponsorship name or whatever it may be. And the same is true for broadcast partners. Obviously, in the case of IndyCar now, Fox Television, which is the television broadcast partner, has an ownership stake within the league itself. But for the NBA or the NFL, which are 800-pound gorillas in comparison to a more niche sport like auto racing, or like, for that matter, still soccer, at least in the American side of things. The NBA and the NFL specifically. But the NBA has the big-time networks that are paying big-time dollars, billions of dollars, in order to broadcast their games. Eddie just played the NBA on NBC theme because of the fact that NBC is now back in the game. And I think actually as a Pacer fan, so much of the great Pacer teams and memories that people in this town have happened during the mid-'90s when NBC was the primary broadcast partner for games. So when you hear that music, you automatically associate it. But we live in a different world now. And that different world means that all sports properties are broadcast through different avenues. You have the streaming aspect of Amazon Prime that shows NBA games. You have the streaming aspect of NBC's Peacock, which airs games. You have Disney Plus, which is partnered with ESPN. So if you are a fan of a particular team, in this case, in this market, the Indiana Pacers, yes, they are on, and I always forget now, I believe it's FanDuel Network,
Sports
right?
Network, yes.
FanDuel Sports Network. So if you have your regular cable carries FanDuel Sports Network, you're okay. But there are certain, and I don't know which ones because it does not apply to my particular cable provider. My cable provider, I get with the package, the FanDuel Sports Network. But there are some that whatever cable provider they have, or if they've cut the cord and they now use streaming services, they are, having to pay additional for FanDuel.
Mm-hmm.
Then let's say that it's one of the games that Kristen Airy and Quinn Buckner are not working, which happens from time to time because they are going to be on one of the nationally televised games. If they go onto a nationally televised game and it's on Amazon Prime, now you've got to subscribe to Amazon Prime in order to get that game. Or Peacock. It's going to be a Peacock game. You got to subscribe to Peacock to get that game.
I don't know if the NBA, Jake, is like the NFL where all their games have to be on in a local market. So I don't know if they're going to be on like WTHI, for example, if they're on Amazon Prime or something like that.
So provided for free, right?
Yeah.
But the point being, it is the role and responsibility of any business partnership to make sure that you are consistently advocating for your sponsors and partners. And when you have the commissioner of the NBA being asked about whether or not it is becoming too cost preventative for people to follow their favorite team because of having to buy all of the different apps and subscriptions, it is in the best interest of Adam Silver to say, well, I understand that concern. We're going to do this like we did yesterday with my coach speak. I'm going to be Adam Silver. Now, I do a fabulous David Stern.
Do we need the elixir, Jake?
No, because I'm going to be Adam Silver directly on what he should say, okay? Now, Eddie, I would like for you to ask me, because I do a fabulous David Stern, the predecessor to Adam Silver. Give me any player of the NBA that would have been drafted in David Stern's era, okay? Give me any player that David Stern would have announced as a draft pick.
Michael Jordan?
Okay. And I always forget, Jordan was the third or the fourth pick. You had Olajuwon, you had Bowie, and then you had Jordan, right? So he was the third pick. With the third pick in the 1984 NBA draft, the Chicago Bulls select Michael Jordan from the University of North Carolina. That's my David Stern. Now, here's what Adam Silver should have said.
Wait. Check that. Isaiah Thomas?
With the second pick in the 1981 NBA draft, the Detroit Pistons select Isaiah Thomas from the University of Indiana. And before anybody sends me the text and critiques me, that's how he always said it. I have no idea why he said Indiana University. It drove me crazy. What Adam Silver should have said is this. Eddie, ask me the question, please, if I'm Adam Silver, about the increased cost of viewership for an NBA fan.
Are you concerned, Adam Silver, about the viewership numbers going down this year because of the cost of being able to watch, your local team?
I understand the question, and I appreciate the question, and it's certainly a conversation we've had with our partners, and we're very excited with our partnerships at Amazon, as well as NBC and their streaming service of Peacock, and, of course, we know about ESPN and Disney Plus and the services they provide. All of them provide fabulous content, and they provide great content. And we are encouraged and we are optimistic that our fans will understand the value in those memberships and being able to not only watch our games on those, but then on the nights when their favorite team's not playing, being able to take advantage of the other programming involved. So I certainly understand from a fan standpoint that it's a new era and it's a different era, but I think that they will find that when you really weigh it all out, that it all becomes worth the investment that you make in those properties because you're getting content above and beyond the NBA, and we're very excited about what we provide. Thank you. Next question.
Nice job.
But when he comes out and says, look.
Who's your favorite dog and pony show?
When Adam Silver comes out, though, and says, listen, we are a highlight league. We're a highlight league. And yeah, we could do this Elixir for him if you'd like. The Elixir, of course, being, and this is a subscription fee that we pay, right? The Elixir what the Elixir does is it takes comments from a coach, or in this case, a commissioner, and it runs it through a format. And we paid good money for this. And then it spits out what they were really saying, okay? And this is, again, we don't do this often, but we've had good success with it. And the Elixir, and they just called me the other day, actually, to ask if I would, if we're pleased with it. And I said I am.
They did, now, or I forget our CFO's name. I forget her name, Jake.
That's right. Carol, one of our 26 female listeners.
27. Get it right. 27.
Okay, so would you like to run through the Elixir? I'm having problems with the Elixir right now getting it fired up, though.
Uh-oh. You've waited too long to use it, so it's got to reboot. You probably need a software upgrade.
The way that we do this, though, we play the clip and then we run the translation, right?
That is correct. Well, we got to run it through the Elixir before we can play the translation.
The Elixir's acting up right now, Eddie.
Uh-oh.
I apologize. For whatever
you waste all this money, the company money on this Elixir, and it doesn't work. What is this?
I've got to check, and I think maybe I didn't pay the app subscription.
Okay.
But either way, when Adam Silver says this is a highlight league and you can watch the highlights on TikTok or you can watch the highlights for free in any number of different places, that is true. And there is an element of truth to that. But where Adam Silver erred is this. The stereotype of the NBA to the people that are detractors. When you say we are a highlight league and you can watch highlights on TikTok, you are speaking to an audience that is already aware of that fact. When you are saying to people that would normally not think of it as a highlight league on TikTok, what you're saying to them is, we understand that you, Mr. or Mrs. basketball fan, talk about the fact that you no longer watch the NBA because it's no longer basketball. You want to see screens, you want to see defense, you want to see good passing, you want to see solid shooting. And while I personally, Jake Query, believe those things exist in the NBA, it is a stereotype right now and a stigma against the NBA that as a league they have to overcome. And that is the narrative that it is a league that is nothing but dunks and individualized highlights, and it does not feature the basketball that people have become accustomed to seeing as a team. And when you come out and say, look, you don't have to watch our whole game. I mean, you don't need to log on to Prime to see the game. Just go on TikTok and you can see it in 45 seconds. Because you're going to see an unbelievable Halliburton 3, you're going to see a quick Neesmith 3, and you're going to see one unbelievable dunk from Obi Toppin on TikTok.
And you'll see it pretty much instantaneously.
Right. But the point being, what you are doing in saying that is you are subliminally and subconsciously endorsing the narrative that your product is no longer about team play, but rather about a handful of exciting plays by individuals per contest, which I don't think is true. I really like the NBA. I like it because I watch and see incredible athleticism, unbelievable hand-eye coordination, unbelievable quickness of movement. I see all of those things. But you have to watch the totality of game a lot of times to see and understand that and watch play. And I'm not trying to sound like some soccer fan. You know, you have to watch the play develop. And then when you do so, you can watch
soccer
it more
or
intellectually.
polo?
Well, that's Ulysses Bentley as well. But the point being, he speaks to the narrative that is the critique of his sport. Now, another thing I just mentioned that I find interesting.
You should have gone with your English accent there.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes.
You know, Jake, next Friday, I better call off.
Oh, is it Talk Like a Pirate Day?
Next Friday is.
Oh, listen, we do huge numbers on that day, and kids love it. I mean, kids love when and again, Eddie, I'll ask the question, which I'll ask you next Friday. You, of course, know the Pirates' favorite letter of the alphabet, right?
I'm not going to answer because if I say one, it's going to be the other. If I say one, it's going to be the other.
No. Naturally speaking, what is a pirate's favorite letter of the alphabet?
The C.
No, it's R.
Exactly.
Okay. But I mentioned, and this is a confluence that I find fascinating. When I mentioned the Pacers and where you can watch Pacer games, what's the name of that network?
FanDuel Sports Network.
Okay. And when you talk about, I'm trying to think of, like in the NFL, oftentimes, and I think some of the networks do this now, the like pregame, they will do a rundown of who is in or out or what good matchups are, and oftentimes those are sponsored by another kind of a rival of FanDuel. Which one am I talking about?
DraftKings. Well, if you watch Sunday Night Football, Jake, Matthew Berry goes on there and gives you his best parlay, and other guys give you their best bets for that game. If you watch Monday Night Football, you've got each analyst giving a bet through ESPN Bet.
And listen, I understand and I appreciate and I enjoy the responsible nature of all of those apps. And I think the vast majority of people do. It's not unlike alcohol or other things that in moderation can be enjoyed responsibly, but then unfortunately there are those that fall into an addiction of it. And it's no different. I mean, there are a million different vices that you could fall into that. The slippery slope in terms of the gambling apps. And again, I mean, I don't have a problem with them. I don't mean like I don't have an addiction to it. I mean like I don't fundamentally have a problem with it. I enjoy placing a wager here and there on FanDuel or DraftKings or BetRivers. You know, I mean, there are a multitude of these. Some have come and gone. But what my fear was when this happened, and I'll tell you this story. When I was in college, I lived in an apartment complex that had a lot of athletes that lived in the apartment complex. And I have mentioned on numerous occasions some of the guys that I was friends with in college that played Division I athletics at Indiana University. The story I'm about to tell is not any of those guys. It's not. But I was in the parking lot of my apartment building one day when a guy pulled up, true story, and asked, like, hey, doesn't so-and-so live near here? And I'm like, yeah. And no further or no sooner than that than did this player, who I've never mentioned on this radio station, so it is not somebody that, I mean, a good guy from what I knew, good guy, but not somebody that I've talked about before. So it's not the players that people have heard me mention on the radio, whatever else. But this individual pulls up because this particular athlete was playing really well. And he pulls up with an envelope of money. And he says, hey, I want to let you know I run a sports book, and you made me a lot of money last week. So I want to thank you for it. This is a true story. You can put me on a lie detector test.
Is this the Querying Company bookie, Mike?
I'm telling you, I actually know this guy's name. I didn't know him well, but we learned it very quickly, okay? He was not somebody that went to Indiana, but he lived in Indiana. So he seeks out this athlete, and I'm standing there witnessing this. You can put me on a lie detector test. And the athlete, which I always was impressed by, the athlete was like in shock and then says, I can't accept that. I can't take that money. And the bookie is like, no. Like, it's free. I mean, like, you don't owe me anything. You made me a lot of money, and I wanted to thank you for it. And the athlete's like, but then I get into a tangled web that is weaved if I take that money. And I sat there with my own two eyes and observed this, and this athlete turned him down and was almost uncomfortable with it. And that was kind of the end of, now this was 30 years ago.
And the lie detector determined you're telling the truth.
That's right. This was 30 years ago. My point being, considering that took place 30 years ago, and it was somebody who wasn't even from Bloomington but from Indiana that drove to Bloomington to find said athlete to, grease the wheel a little bit, I can only imagine the number of times that took place or was accepted that I didn't even witness or that I was unaware of. So now that you have the accessibility on college campuses of the sports gambling app, you knew it was going to be a matter of time before you started seeing players that are, I mean, we've seen it at the professional level, let alone in the still navigating your way into early adulthood, bad decision-making era of college athletes. We now have an increased number of stories, and the latest being Fresno State. I believe I saw Arizona State today as well.
Fresno State and San Jose State. Yeah.
So there is now investigation and a banning of athletes because they are figuring out these athletes are making wager on gambling apps. And I understand, if you are the student athlete, why you would have difficulty understanding and grasping and coming to grips with and even accepting the negative nature of the action of that when everywhere you turn, the apps are in bed with different franchises.
And it's just so easy, Jake.
Correct. The accessibility, right?
Yeah.
I'm not condoning
You don't have to walk into a casino
people
anymore.
for
It's right there on
using
your
the
phone.
app. But I understand, and I'm not condemning. I'm not condemning people for using the app, and I'm not condoning the players using the app. I'm simply, or whichever it may be. I'm just simply saying there is a gray area that has been created that I understand why it would make it difficult for a young person in particular to discern the potential hazard in what it is they're doing. Now, I do know that they go through, obviously, a number of, and I'm sure they have different groups that speak to them and organizations that come in and the NCAA and all of those things. But it is my concern that this is just the beginning. If you've already seen it at the professional level, and who would have more to lose than somebody with an NFL salary or an NBA salary or a Major League Baseball salary? In this case, yes, we are in the NIL era, but I guarantee you there are a lot of players at smaller schools that are thinking to themselves, nobody's going to notice if I'm doing this. Yeah, I get it. Like, they're going to be looking at this school that's ranked in the top 5, this school that's ranked in a big bowl game, this school. But my school, they ain't going to notice. And my worry is that what we are hearing right now is the first of what will be an ongoing series of stories about this for some time. I don't know what the answer is, but it is something of concern to me. Purdue and USC coming up this weekend. Rob Blackman, the Purdue Radio Network, joins us next. How are you? Thank you for tuning in. My name is Jake Query, Eddie Garrison, the other voice you hear on this program. It is Query & Company on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan. I should wish to our next guest a happy belated birthday. His birthday would have been 1 week ago yesterday. That would be last Wednesday. I know this because he is my September 3rd brethren. He is also the pre- and post-game halftime host for Purdue football and the voice of Purdue's basketball program as well. Rob Blackman joining us on the show. Hi, Rob. How are you?
Yes, sir, Jake. Hope you had a good September the 3rd. That was my 55th birthday, so the big double nickel for me, brother.
Somebody told me the double nickel is a big one. Did you do anything different than you did on the 54th?
I did not. I actually didn't know 55 was supposed to be a big one, so I guess I blew it there. I don't know.
Well, I'm kind of with you. I mean, I was 53, so it's just, you're in a holding pattern between like 50 and 60, I guess, when people care. You know what I mean?
That's how I look at it. Exactly. That's exactly how I
Hey,
look
let's
at
get
it.
to this. Speaking of things that, you look at and you have to double take before it becomes reality, like, for example, being 55 or 53. But, I was in the Rose Bowl, the venue, the Rose Bowl this past weekend. And, Rob, I'll be honest. I mean, it's a great venue. It's a beautiful facility. It's historic, all of those things. And it just was super weird for me still to look up and see a Big Ten logo, and I'm like, oh, gosh, that's right. It's so weird. And USC coming into Ross-Ade being a Big Ten matchup, that alone is surreal. But the other thing, too, is that USC is coming in not as a top 5 team, which I think a lot of people would have expected. What challenge do you think Purdue is looking towards at USC? Have you gotten an idea or a feel for what Purdue thinks or Barry Odom thinks is the way to hang with the Trojans?
I don't know so much that he's tipped his hand in that regard. I do know from especially listening to him speak here a couple of times this week leading up to the game, I do know the fact that there's a great amount of familiarity with their starting quarterback because it's someone who played for Coach Odom at UNLV 2 years ago. That is very concerning because obviously there's not going to be a better scouting report on the starting QB than a guy that's already played for you. And they're really, look, his numbers are outstanding. I think he's leading the Big Ten in yards passing, like already 700 yards through 2 games. And I think he leads the Big Ten in touchdowns already, 6, I think it is 5 or 6. So the numbers speak for themselves, but then again, you have a head coach that is very, very familiar with the guy because he, as I said, he coached him at UNLV and helped him win 9 games. So that's where the number one concern is. Now, what is it going to take to beat USC? That I'm not so certain. Purdue is, 2-0 is better than 0-2. I understand that, but it's not like the competition's been overly difficult here through these first two weeks. So it's going to be a major step up in competition. There's no doubt about that. And we shall see. I'm not sure what to expect on this one. USC's in a similar boat as Purdue. Their first 2 opponents weren't necessarily world beaters. So I'm not so certain, Jake, maybe both of these teams aren't kind of still maybe uncertain what exactly they'll have, but they should, I think they'll have a much better understanding of that about 7:30 or so Saturday night.
The thing, Rob, that's interesting, Rob Blackman, our guest, when you look at Purdue, even Purdue themselves probably didn't know largely who and what they were because so much turnover and a new coach and et cetera. Through 2 games, and I realize 2 games not a season make, and to your point, the competition, not necessarily yet at Big Ten level. But what has jumped out at you about this Purdue team that you have said to yourself, okay, that's something that I can kind of see is going to be the pattern of who they're going to be if they want to win games this year?
Yeah, well, 2 things, again, 2 games a pattern does not make, but I love the fact that Purdue has only committed 5 penalties through the first 2 games, 5 accepted penalties, and none of those penalties have been pre-snap penalties. That, to me, is a direct reflection of the coaching and the discipline that's been instilled within the program.
And that was kind of the calling card for Odom at UNLV, was it not? I mean, just discipline, not shoot yourself in the foot football, right?
Right. Don't beat yourself. And the same on the turnovers. Purdue's only had 1 turnover. That was an interception last weekend. And Purdue's only had 1 fumble through the first 2 games. And luckily that ball rolled out of bounds and it wasn't recovered by the other team. So Purdue, again, to me, in all the years I've been doing this, I'd like to think that a direct reflection of the coaching when it comes to football typically comes in the manner of penalties, especially pre-snap penalties, and turnovers, because those are both just concentration things, right? You're either concentrating or you're not. And I tell you, Purdue's been, damn near perfect in those two categories through the first two games. Again, once the level of competition steps up, we shall see if Purdue can continue to have success in winning games. But I would think if you can continue that trend of minimal penalties and rarely turning the ball over, at least you're going to give yourself a chance, which, of course, last year was not something Purdue was ever in a situation to do, quite frankly. So those are the two things that have really jumped out to me.
It's so interesting because I've made the joke, probably at this point I need to expire the joke, but that Purdue still practices with name tags on because there are just so many new faces.
Yeah.
And that probably is true even for the coaching staff. For you as, just a broadcaster in general, when you look at this team, give our listeners the name of, and I don't mean quarterback, the name of a player or two that has jumped out at you where you've said, you know what, I think Boiler fans are going to enjoy watching this guy play?
Yeah, so two of them, they both play the same position. Michael Jackson III, which, of course, is a great name to use, to have, I should say, in the world of college football. And Nitro Tuggle, who, again, another pretty cool name. When your first name is Nitro, that's kind of cool. But those two guys, in training camp leading up to week one, it seemed like those two guys were making all the plays as wide receivers. And I know Ahmad Branch has been the go-to guy early in the season, which has been great to see. But those are the two guys that I did not see coming. Now, maybe I should have. I mean, Michael Jackson, speaking of USC familiarity, he played 3 years at USC. Was it let's see, I think he was at Auburn last year, maybe Georgia, I think it was. Anyway, but yeah, those are two guys.
I think it was Georgia. Yeah.
Was it? Yeah, Georgia. You go into training camp and you're like, okay, I mean, we had 82 new guys, man. I mean, I like an idiot, I made the mistake of trying to learn the roster during the spring, which is a really bad idea. I'll never do it again because 25 of those guys left after the spring game. So why did I even bother? But a couple of new guys in Jackson and Tuggle, they come rolling through and you're like, hey, these guys have been pretty impressive in practice. I wonder if they can carry it over to the games. Well, they have to this point. So those have been the two guys that have really gotten my attention. Hopefully there are more to come down the road, but those two right there, certainly, they grabbed my attention early and often in training camp. And again, luckily, they've continued to play at a high level, at least through the first two games.
And then, Rob, in terms of Barry Odom, I think we know, I mean, you might have been the one that I was talking to about this, that, just kind of his mantra, and you correct me if I'm wrong, if I got the verbiage wrong here, but it's basically like, like smart, discipline, hard nose, style.
Hard, smart, tough. Those are those
okay.
3 words. Yep.
And that's what he wants to see from his players. And I think so far you would say so far so good, right? But in terms of he himself and just his overall vibe and personality, what sort of coach does he seem to be to you?
Well, he's certainly one that is not afraid to, what would be the right phrase here, to make himself a man of the people. He has been, and look, I get it. When you're the first-year head coach, a lot of obligations outside of coaching the team come with it. But that guy, he was at the freshman orientation. They call it Boiler Gold Rush. When the freshmen were on campus, he had a speaking engagement there. He's gone and spoken to the marching band, talking to them about how important they are to the success of Purdue. He's gone out and met the students, the fans that are in line waiting for tickets. He's gone out and taken pictures with them, shaking their hands, thanking them for coming. He's doing all those PR things that go a long way in endearing yourself to not only to the fan base, but certainly the student fan base, which is such a very important part of it. And I will share a story with you here, Jake, that I haven't shared with many. Myself and Joey Molinaro are doing a podcast now for Purdue Athletics. And our very first guest on our first podcast a couple of weeks ago was Coach Odom, obviously. Why not have the head football coach on as your first guest? When that thing was over, it hadn't been 15 minutes. He had already sent me a text thanking me for having him on the podcast and look forward to doing, things like this down the road. Now, number one, how he got my phone number, I'm not sure. And number two, the fact that he went out of his way to send me a text. I've never had that happen with any of our football coaches. And this is my 22nd year. on the broadcast team. So just those little things. Again, from a PR standpoint, he is certainly winning. He is winning that battle, easily winning that battle. And it doesn't hurt, obviously, when you're 2-0. But he does seem to be a guy that's not afraid to put himself out there. And again, be the face of the franchise. Maybe that's the right phrase. He's not bashful about doing that. And for now, it's certainly working.
Okay, lastly, Rob, basketball season will be here before we know it. You will be on the mic for Purdue basketball and Matt Painter's group. Looks like it's been a really good offseason for Purdue, and that their ability, and this is what I love about it, and I wanted you to just kind of expand on this. And I'm not going to say anything that people don't already know, but Rob, you see it up close and personal. You see the practices. You see kind of the, how the sausage is made with Purdue basketball. I love the fact that Matt Painter has a way he wants to do things, and he recruits players based on those that want to do it that way, not contouring and not changing things based on the number of stars that a kid has, but rather the number of stars that he can make out of them. And that's what I love, and it looks like he is continuing that trend in the way he is sustaining the program and getting guys to continue to buy in. Can you expand on what you see that makes that statement valid?
Well, yes, and I'll steal Matt Painter's statement. Speaking of statements, he uses this one all the time, and to me, it perfectly encapsulates what you're talking about. And the phrase is, you become us, we do not become you. And that's how they go about recruiting. And they make sure you understand as a potential, player, student athlete at Purdue, that it doesn't really matter how many stars you have besides your name. If you're a great high school player or a standout on the AAU circuit, that's great. But we are not going to cater to your needs, your whims, nor your playing time or how many shots you need to get in the game. Again, you become us, so we do not become you. Now, if you choose to become part of the program, the chances are you're probably going to win a whole bunch of games. And indeed, if you are good enough, trust me, you'll end up playing professional basketball. We've seen it with the guys that have now come through Purdue, and especially in the last 5 to 7 years. So it's really that easy, Jake. The old "you become us, we do not become you" mantra in the game of recruiting. Now, I understand it's a little bit easier when you're a guy Matt Painter's age. Speaking of 55, he's 55. He's been at it a while. He's had a lot of success. You can be a little bit more brazen in your approach in recruiting when you've had the success he has had. But obviously it's working, and I don't see that philosophy changing anytime soon, like ever, actually. So, and that's true with the guys, Purdue picked up in the portal this year. That's true with Omer Meyer, the freshman from Tel Aviv. They all understand the deal.
And that kid can play, right? I know that we don't know, we haven't seen it in Big Ten level yet, but Meyer looks like a kid that can play.
He can play. Obviously, he'll struggle, whereas most freshmen do early in the Big Ten season with the physicality of the league, and that's something he's going to have to learn to adapt to. Luckily, we have a couple of guys on our team already that have done their best to try to, welcome him to the world of college basketball with the way they've been going at him in practice every day. But yes, that's it, man. We bring in guys. Purdue brings in guys that. As long as they want to play for the name, that old saying, are you playing for the name that's on the front of the chest or on the back of the jersey? Purdue tries very hard to make sure those are the guys that they're getting, the ones that want to play for the name that's across the front of the chest.
I know this much. Rob Blackman is not a guy that in college as a freshman kind of struggled from the get-go. My understanding is, to borrow another theme from this conversation, he was a man of the people in Evansville, Indiana from the day he arrived on campus. Isn't that right, Rob?
Well, let's just say I never missed a party.
That's right. And they had a lot of them in Evansville, I'm sure, right? Somehow
the nice thing about a campus of only 2,000 students, whoever is hosting the party is basically hosting the whole campus. So
the word gets out quickly, right?
Never conflicting parties, because you knew wasn't working. So whoever was having the party that night, basically everyone was there, including yours truly. That's for certain.
Purdue and USC coming up on Saturday. Rob Blackman with the pregame, the intermission, the postgame as well. Rob, appreciate it as always.
All right, Jake. Thank you, man. Happy
right.
birthday, brother.
Thank you. You too. Rob Blackman joining us on the program. Speaking of that game, they are going to honor the 2000 team. And one of the guys that had the biggest play, I think, of that year, to be honest with you, not named Drew Brees, is going to join us coming up 15 minutes from now. I have a question here. I mentioned that earlier today I had to do but I had an appointment for a cardiac stress test. And one of the doctors that was going over the test, I just was having a conversation about the results of said test. And I jokingly said to Mottman, I jokingly said, did the doctor that administered the test comment how cool I am? And he replied with, and I'm curious of this, his reply was, yes, he also is a type A personality. Now, Eddie, would you consider me a type A personality? You're around me on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
Okay, I don't agree with that. But let me read for you. Let me read for you the definition of type A personality, and I want you to ding or buzz whether you feel that I fall into these categories. Okay.
Okay.
The first, setting very high, exacting standards for themselves and often becoming overly critical of their own work. Okay, secondly, a tendency to juggle multiple tasks at once, believing that it would lead to greater excuse me? Okay. This is a real test. An intense focus on work, sometimes to the point of having an unhealthy relationship with their jobs. Okay, now this one I'm also very curious about. Now, I need you to answer honestly with a ding or a buzz.
Okay.
Can be aggressive, unfriendly, and prone to anger, especially under stress. When am I ever aggressive and unfriendly?
All the time. I'm just kidding.
I'm as friendly as it gets. I walk down the street and strangers just walk up and have conversation with me. Okay. Impatience and easily irritated, becoming frustrated or angry when facing interruptions or delays. I think now you're just having fun with this.
Oh,
okay?
Really?
Sense of urgency and time pressure, feeling the need to get things done quickly, disliking delays, and feeling rushed. I don't think that's it. By the way, speaking of which, did you finish that thing I sent you earlier today? Okay, competitive nature. Strong inclination to be the best and to compete with others in various aspects of life. You find me competitive?
Oh, yes, Jake. Yeah. You're competitive, all right.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And then lastly, a relentless desire to succeed and achieve goals, often setting high standards for themselves.
I got 3 texts. You're having too much fun with that dinger. The ding button is getting a workout.
Here's the thing. Is part of being a type A personality not recognizing that you're a type A personality? Because I don't consider myself any of those things. I think I'm just a laid-back dude. Right?
You can be laid back, yeah.
I don't think I multitask that much, do I? I mean, what in my life am I multitasking?
Well, Jake, you're multitasking a lot of things.
Okay. Honestly, I always thought of type A personalities as people that are like, no one wants to be around them. And so now I'm like, wait a minute, is he telling me no one wants to be around me? Is that what this means? Then I have to, if that's the case, then the competitive nature in me wants to come out and give myself a little bit more ambition to make sure that there is no more delay in people wanting to be around me, because I want it like right now, right? I want to dive all in and make this perfect. And if I've got to do a couple things to do it at one time, no problem. That's how I live my life.
People who are type B are carefree, less competitive. This is you, though, social and outgoing.
Yeah, see, I'm a type B.
No, you're type A. Just because you have one trait in the type B, it doesn't make you a type B.
How about this? I'm type 3.5. Oh, gosh. I got a 3.5 average. Got some B's, got some A's, right? You really think I'm competitive?
Yes.
I don't think that you and I have ever had an occasion to compete with anything, have we?
Well, duh, fantasy football, Jake. Come on now.
Yeah, but you cheat in that because you're the commissioner.
I don't cheat.
Okay.
I was the last team in the playoffs last year, and I won. That's not cheating at all.
Yeah, but you're the commissioner. You were like rigging moves and trades and all that.
If I remember correctly, I helped you out because you dropped Tyreek Hill, and you're like, hey, I didn't mean to do that. And the other commissioner was like, nope, sorry, that's what you did. Was a nice enough guy,
but
went back in.
But you did understand how it would happen, right? Because
I know, but most league managers would not be understandable, Jake.
Purdue found themselves in a situation where they needed a big-time play. And they sat there and said, maybe a quarter of a century from now, we will continue to celebrate this team. And I mean that in a good way, because it would be such a special, remarkable season and one that any program would want to enjoy. And Purdue did enjoy it because when they needed it most, they dialed up a play and one guy delivered. And that guy who is going to be celebrated along with his teammates on Saturday for Purdue USC joins us next.
Second down and 10. Offensive line continues to do a great job. Wide open. Got him. Touchdown Purdue. Seth Morales. Holy Toledo.
That's how it sounded as Purdue knocked off Ohio State en route to the 2000 Rose Bowl, where they would face the Washington Huskies. Drew Brees connecting to the pride of Lawrence Central High School, Seth Morales, who joins us now on the program as a number of Boilers will be on hand this Saturday to honor that 2000 Rose Bowl winning team. Seth, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
How often do you see and or hear that play?
Oh, man, it's probably weekly. Somebody will send me a text or it'll pop up in a, hey, I remember that play when I bumped into somebody, on the street. So it's definitely out there often.
Here is a really weird question, okay?
Yeah.
You have seen that play so many times.
Yep.
I'm curious, are you able to remember what it was like in the first person? In other words, can you still see it as it happened to your eyes in the moment? Or has that been now replaced by the video image of it?
No, I still remember it clear as day. I mean, first person, late in the game, running that route. I mean, everything kind of got really, really quiet, and it was in the evening time, so it was kind of dark, and that ball was up there in the air for quite some time. But I remember thinking to myself, don't drop the ball, because I was so wide open. Catch it, hear the crowd roar. And it was kind of slow motion the last like 5 to 10 yards. If you see me kind of run into the end zone, it was kind of like a relief. And so I remember it kind of step by step.
Reggie Wayne once told me that the hardest passes to catch were the ones where you were wide open. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the ones where it really matters and you're wide open, and if you drop it, you're in infamy. It's infamous if you do that. Yeah, so I think that play, given kind of the stakes of whether we win the Big Ten championship or not, beating Ohio State, it had that much more kind of impact on it. So yeah, it definitely matters. But when you're the only guy out there and you're alone, you better not drop the ball. And I was fortunate.
When you're in a play like that, and Drew Brees obviously is the guy delivering you the ball, right? And we now know and obviously you knew ahead of most people just the precision of Drew Brees. It goes without saying. But when you're in the huddle and you're calling up that play, and the game's in the balance, and I think you're on your own 36 or something like that. So is the play called where it is like, hey, this is going to you? Or were you simply one of the, say, 3 or 4 progression reads that he had, and you didn't know whether you were going to be the guy or not? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
It does. Yeah, when I heard that play call, I knew I wasn't an option. It's usually going to option 1 or 2, and which at the time it was Vinny Sutherland or John Stanford. And I was the 4th usual option on that type of play. So, and if you watch him, you broke the huddle, in those situations, a lot of times you're running 2-minute and you're gassed. And so a lot of guys, like if they're on the backside of a play, they're not going to run their ass off. And so for me, it was like, hey, run every play, to the best of your ability. I think that's why I was on the field. And, for me, keep sprinting, and I had pretty good stamina. I think I had already had about 6 catches a game. So I knew I just was going to, bust my tail off and try to do what I needed to do. But fortunately, Drew was such a sound quarterback that he was able to run through his progression. Option 1 and 2 weren't there. And if you watch it, it's just that's the talent in him. He was disciplined enough to go to 3 and then 4. And the safety bit on the 3rd receiver, and I was wide open.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's fascinating, Seth. And I mean, not to, there's no point in going back now and going roster by roster on who the other quarterbacks were in the Big Ten, but we'll just use Big Ten as the example. How many Big Ten quarterbacks make that play? How many get to the point, and I don't mean that to knock you, but you were mentioning, you're read 3 or 4. How many guys even get that deep in their progression to make that play?
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe 1 or 2. If you think of the time, like Tom Brady was before that, maybe a year before, but maybe, during the Big Ten that season, probably no one. He just had, the discipline. He would outwork a lot of people in film room and just, he knew how to kind of go through that progression. And so, I mean, future Hall of Famer quarterback, I was fortunate, right time, right place, All-American quarterback, Hall of Fame, NFL Super Bowl winning quarterback in the future. And so I was just fortunate to have a really accurate, sharp dude throwing the rock to me.
Those guys you mentioned, by the way, I mean, Drew Brees, obviously John Standiford, who was a great player out of Monrovia, Vinny Sutherland, Tim Stratton, the tight end, Stu Schweigert, who was like a walking interception, Aiken Adele, Travis Dorsch as well. You guys are all among those that will be honored this weekend at Ross-Ade for the 25th anniversary. How excited are you, and how much do you talk to those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I just texted John Stanford today. We were talking often. You kind of stick. A lot of times you stick with kind of your close-knit guys. I was really tight with the receiver group, and a lot of those guys are still here in Indianapolis. There's a text thread with Vinny and Stanford and A.T. Simpson and Donald Winston. We all kind of stick together from a wide out or wide receiver standpoint. But that crew was really tight. So we all try to come back a couple games a season to connect, and a lot of guys, Lafayette's the way to kind of the common ground to bring everyone back. So, I mean, Purdue doesn't make it to the Rose Bowl too often. So, we're celebrated up there. We're grateful for that. And so it's fun to see those guys. But a lot of the guys stay in touch in a meaningful way. And that team was really special, full of a bunch of leaders and guys that played in the league and are doing great things outside of football, later in their career with their families and their profession. So it's just really fun to kind of look back and see just how special of a group that 2000 team was.
It's weird, Seth, and I'm going to –
What's that?
When I say this, you're probably going to exhale and be like, dude, really? You're having me on to ask this? So
yeah,
are you familiar with Mike Pruitt, the great running back? There were the Pruitt brothers, but Mike Pruitt was a really good Purdue back in the mid-'70s. Are you familiar with Mike Pruitt?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely familiar.
So Mike Pruitt would be to you what you are to today's Boilermakers. And when you hear it that way, that's when you think it doesn't. In other words, to me, it seems like 3 years ago, right? I mean, it seems like 3 to 5 years ago, and it is worth celebrating because it has been that long since. And yet you have this group of players now that are maybe this is what is good for Purdue football currently, to see that example that is there for them. I mean, how much do you follow today's Purdue players?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty tight. We've had guys like Rondell Moore that came through the program, had a lot of talent. He was an intern for our business at Morales Group. So I stay pretty in touch, whether it's Coach Walters or Coach Odom or whoever's the new coach, we try to stay in touch and go back and speak to the team. And I think, for me, it was like Bob Greasy and Leroy Keys. Those guys were kind of the Pruitt, kind of the late 70s or late 60s, early 70s. Those guys were iconic. They were up in the, rafters. You could see their All-American status. So, we wanted to be like them. So I think it's great trying to be intentional about getting back there and saying, hey, this is possible. This is like the last ranked Big Ten recruiting class. And we ended up winning the Big Ten championship and going to a Rose Bowl. So it can be done when a lot of people, kind of have you, they're not favoring you or you're kind of that underdog. And so, I mean, I think that's the story of the 2000 team is like gritty underdog overachievers that really made headways, in that season.
Now, you mentioned the Morales Group, which you're the president of the Morales Group, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
And that is, I was thinking real estate, but correct me if I'm wrong here in terms of what it is that your business does today.
Yeah, the bulk of what we do is we help people find jobs. We're in staffing and recruiting.
Okay,
so,
sorry. Okay.
No, all good. We've been doing that for 22 years now. My dad started it, and I jumped into the business right out of college. So it's been fun growing this thing and using it for good. And so I've been doing that for the last 22 years.
Well, the reason I ask, I'm curious of this. I think that we think Seth Morales is our guest from that 2000 Purdue team that's going to be honored this weekend at Ross-Ade with the Boilers and USC. With college athletics in general, Seth,
Yep.
we think that every player on the field that we're watching, that the barometer and the ceiling is the NFL, and that college success is defined by whether or not a guy goes on and plays in the NFL. And yet, there is so much that can be learned from just the team aspect of it. What things did you learn from Joe Tiller or from working with other guys on the roster that you carry with you today?
Yeah, I mean, with Joe Tiller, it was all about just hard nose and mindset. He was a psychologist, and he pushed you to get really uncomfortable. With Drew Brees, it was put in the extra work. When you were heading home to the dorms, he was putting in a couple extra hours from like 10 p.m. on to do extra film. And so seeing guys like that, they're excellent at their craft. It was kind of like it was masterclass if you were taking notes. And so you see guys like Matt Light, who is just kind of the joy of the locker room and jokester, but like very philanthropic, and seeing just how he's post, New England Patriots Super Bowl winning team, seeing how he's kind of carrying himself. And so it's been fun to like learn from those guys, cut it up. But it was, I think for me, it was like, Coach Chaney, who was our offensive coordinator, he was a mastermind from an offensive standpoint. So these guys, man, we had so many talented coaches and players, and the way they brought themselves. If you were paying attention and your antennas were up, you were going to learn quite a bit.
At what point did you realize Drew Brees was special? Is there a particular moment that you can recall where you just went, yeah, okay, this is something here?
Yeah, I mean, I remember we were playing Penn State into the third quarter. We're in kind of the end zone coming out. We've got to march like 90 yards, and he's in the huddle, and you can feel the ground shaking below you, because you got this upper deck. It's a whiteout. Penn State, they get all their fans there, and they do a great job of kind of creating a tense environment. And Drew was just collective in the huddle. He was really sound. He was like, hey, we're going to march down. It's just kind of this like calm, assured presence that you typically wouldn't see when you're down and you're in that type of environment. But the guy just knew how to like keep it together and keep the team going, and wasn't afraid to call guys out in the huddle either. And so I think those moments early on when I was a sophomore, just kind of watching, it was kind of midway through the season as we were getting to run through our kind of month of August or October when we made kind of that run. It was great to see him do those things, and it really kind of stuck out to me that he was going to be super special.
Does he also stay in touch with guys?
Yeah, he does, man. He does. He's got a couple of guys that he's really tight with that, he was in the dorms with when he first started. But he does a good job of kind of circling around, and, if a phone call or a text, he gets, a lot of people are, asking him for stuff, and he's got to kind of guard his time. But for the most part, he's pretty accessible, and I appreciate that.
Okay, lastly, Seth Morales, our guest. Purdue and USC coming up Saturday will be honoring the 2000 Rose Bowl team, of which Seth was a part of it. When you look at this year's version of Purdue, I don't know how much you still keep in touch. You mentioned it earlier, or follow what they are doing. What jumps out at you? What are you curious to see here, and what truly is probably their first big test with USC, which it sounds so weird to say USC in the Big Ten, but nonetheless.
Yeah, it is wild. Yeah, I think what I've seen early on is not a lot of penalties, discipline. The locker room has been won by Coach Odom. I think these guys are trying. You got guys like Devin Mockbee that are talented and leading the charge, but you got some guys that are really trying to make a name for themselves. So I don't know. We'll see. I think their offense has looked pretty good. They've been able to put some points on the board. They responded pretty well last week as they got down in a little bit of a hole. But I think they'll keep it interesting. USC is a little, I don't know. I would say they're not always the most consistent team out there.
Yeah, they're kind of an enigma, right?
Yeah. Very, very talented. Always have, 4 and 5 star players, and, have some pretty good coaches. But I think Purdue will make it interesting. And I love, these big games early on. It was like when Tiller came in early on to the Big Ten, and we took it to Notre Dame. It was kind of like that keystone moment for him, that signature win to really say, hey, we're here. And so I think they'll keep it interesting. We'll see how it turns out. But it's not going to be a blowout, and I think they'll show up and do their thing.
You know, I will tell you this, Seth, being somebody who grew up as a diehard Indiana fan. I mean, I grew up in Indianapolis. I was an IU guy, went to IU.
Yeah.
And then when I got out, and it would have been a little bit after you were playing there, but when I worked at Channel 6 in Indianapolis, and Purdue was kind of my beat, and I had to cover Purdue football, if I say had to, for a couple of years there, and I just loved Joe Tiller. I mean, you know, I don't know what he was like in terms of in day-to-day coach intensity level, but in terms of just his candor with the media, his accessibility, and his personality, I just had such a huge amount of respect for both Gene Cady and Joe Tiller. It was a pleasure to cover those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think they embody Purdue to its fullest. They're gritty, hardworking, old school guys. You know, do it the blue collar way. And you know, he was a guy that he wasn't going to be warm and fuzzy, but he was also going to be really true to his word, and you were going to respect him when he came in. And I feel some of that with Coach Odom. And so, you know, I think it's a good recipe for Purdue football, getting that back into the state of affairs.
Somebody just texted me, Seth. Good Lord, I watched that clip on YouTube just now. Seth was wide open, and he's lucky he didn't fall down. Looked like he stumbled.
Yeah. I should have fell. You know, I was just trying to catch the damn ball.
I'm sure, right? Yeah. The longest 5 minutes of your life.
It was up there for a while. And, thankfully I had a, quarterback put it right in my lap. And, you're kind of gassed at the end of the 2 minute. You're kind of dead. It's hard to, make a play like that. So I was just trying to keep my feet and glad I didn't stumble and made it work.
It's pretty cool, though. Certainly enjoy it this weekend with all the guys and just soaking in what will always be a great celebration and honoring that great team in the Rose Bowl. Seth, enjoy it, man. I appreciate the time on short notice today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Seth Morales joining us from Purdue. Man, can you imagine? And I remember, Eddie, talking to, I used to do a show with Reggie Wayne, and one time, and I can't remember what game it was. I know what it was. It was when Reggie Wayne was towards the end of his career, when Luck was a rookie, and the fabulous game he had against the Packers. And then later in that season, because that was we did either 2 or 3 years of shows with Reggie, but later in that season, there was a play where he was open and he caught a pass and he got run down from behind, I think, or maybe, but he was saying, man, that end zone just seemed to keep running away from me as I was trying to get it. That's when I realized I'm not as young anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, but some of those plays I had against Green Bay were easier than this one because it is difficult when you are that wide open. And the ball, I mean, I would imagine, Eddie, you played baseball, right?
Yeah.
But you were a catcher, right? Did you ever play like in the outfield?
Second base, yeah.
I've always marveled, like with pop flies in Major League Baseball, how easy oftentimes those guys make it look. But I would think sometimes even that's more difficult than just a quick instinctive play. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But,
yeah.
That was a heck of a play for sure. And he's right about USC. I think the branding and the marketing and just the prestige of USC, you feel like you know exactly who USC is because it's USC. But, they were so down last year. And they have talent. USC, it goes without saying, USC should fall out of bed and have 3 first-round receivers on their roster. And, that's a team that's looking for a bounce back as well. And, we'll see what happens with them. Now, Indiana taking on Indiana State Friday night. That game also, to me, that's a fun one because I think we know that Indiana certainly should be able to get a win against Indiana State, but just a Friday night game at Memorial Stadium, and this has become kind of a tradition where they have a Friday game each and every year, but the atmosphere alone is going to be pretty awesome. And I know there has been some resentment's the wrong word, but conversation as to whether or not college football should play Friday night games because I think even Tom Allen said, like, that belongs to high school kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that should be where it is. Your thoughts, Eddie, on whether or not college Division I games should be scheduled on a Friday?
I think it would just depend on the network television side of things. Like, for example, this game on Friday is not on Peacock. It's not or whatever, any case like that. So, not a big fan of it, but I understand why they have to do it sometimes. So, I'd rather not have it, but, football is football, Jake. People are going to show up.
Do you ever get FOMO? You know what they call it, FOMO? The fear of missing out? You ever experience? When's the last time you had FOMO?
I think, Jake, it would be also, I think it's a little different. I don't know how many students that go to IU are from Bloomington. Like, what percentage would you put?
Oh, very, very, very small.
Okay, so if you have a small percentage of students that are at Bloomington or from Bloomington High School, either or, more than likely, still, IU students are going to be at the football game Friday or Saturday night.
I think it's the aspect of the attention of the viewing audience of people that might normally go to the Carmel game or the Warren game or the Broad game, whatever, and now instead they're going and watching college football on a Friday. The attention level of it. But, the one thing, and I've said this before, the one area from when I worked in television, and I worked in television for I don't know how many years, and I love doing radio, and I would prefer doing radio than doing local television. The one area where I get FOMO, the fear of missing out, it happened to me last Friday, admittedly. I was last Friday, as I was getting ready to take off because I flew out of town, just in that, like, the first time you feel that little hint of a chill in the air, and the sun set like around 7:30, just has kind of that crystal non-humidity, like pristine look to it.
Yep.
That time of year, the one time that I get FOMO is I really do miss going out on Friday nights and covering 2 high school football games, because we would always go to one game, get like the first half highlights, go to another game, get the second half highlights, rush back to the station, put together a story for Friday Night Football, or in the case of 13, it was Operation Football, or, the sports, the fifth quarter, I think, on Channel 8. I mean, everybody had their own version of it. But doing that and seeing the excitement and the competitiveness of high school football, to me, that is the one thing that I miss from doing local television. I always enjoyed it. Colts and Broncos coming up Sunday, Lucas Oil Stadium. Matt Taylor will be on the call, and he joins us next. Colts are hoping it'll be a beautiful day coming up Sunday. Late start, Lucas Oil Stadium. When I say late, I mean not your typical 1 o'clock start, 4 o'clock hour, Colts and Broncos. Joining us now on the always busy, especially today, and shockingly unsponsored guest line, Matt Taylor is the voice of the Indianapolis Colts. Matt, how are you?
I'm good, Jake. What's going on?
Just set for this game, right? I mean, the weeks start to I don't know how it is for you, but with each week of the NFL season, and they start to just fly past, but I think Monday is usually kind of a recap day and figure out where you are from an injury standpoint day. Tuesday, you get confirmation on the injury. And then on Wednesday, I kind of start to shift towards now let's see who's up next on the docket. And so that means, Thursday, Friday, you're talking a lot about the opponent. So let's go to Denver. Actually, before we do that, let's go back to, say, Monday, Tuesday. From the injury standpoint, is there anybody that has popped up that you think might be of question coming up this weekend that we did not anticipate being the case?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if you want to go back to Monday and Tuesday, we found out about Charvarius Ward and the concussion protocol. Jalen Jones, it sounds like, is going to miss some time, so you would think he's not going to be able to go on Sunday. So that means the cornerback depth is being tested. It's being pushed pretty good right now early on in the season. A guy like Mekhi Blackman, who was traded for at the end of the preseason, has been here roughly 2+ weeks. Looks like he's going to probably start, or at least at the very minimum, see a huge role within this defense. So, that's a storyline, going into this game when you got guys like Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims you're trying to shut down. Laiatu Latu is a name to keep an eye on the injury report today. That'll come out probably in the next hour and a half, 2 hours. He popped up on the injury report yesterday. So, I mean, that's a big one when you got, one of your defensive ends that you're relying on to kind of break out this year in a sophomore effort. That's really, really important. So, those are the big ones. And, knock on wood, the Colts are still experiencing, as of right now, a pretty clean bill of health early on in the season, which most teams are, to be fair. But, as you were just alluded to there in the open, it's a marathon and everything starts to kind of blend together, and the season's going to start to take its toll, and you're going to see more and more important bodies on the injury report show up for the Colts.
Matt, one thing that I was thinking about, and I'm going to take the quarterback answer out of this because it goes without saying. I mean, we've talked about that competition, since day one, but if you look at marquee players for the Colts, or really any starter for the Colts, which player for the Colts would you say has the closest, in terms of the backup, the least amount of drop-off when you go from – and I mean that as a respect to the backup, not as a drop-off from the starter. Do you get what I'm saying? So which position are they the safest where you say, yeah, I mean, look, you obviously want your starter, but let's not sleep on this guy that's going to have to step in because they got a guy right there where there's not a huge drop-off. That position would be where?
It's a great question. I think right now, just hearing you say that, I would probably say wide receiver, just because, you've got 5 of them up on game day, and, your 2 rotational guys that aren't quote unquote starters, at least not, and when you go 3 wide receiver set, to begin a game, guys like A.D. Mitchell and Ashton Dulin. I don't think there's any drop off, very minimal. When let's say if Pierce were to get banged up, or Josh Downs were to get banged up, or Michael Pittman Jr., I mean, A.D. Mitchell, I think, is an emerging player. I mean, Ashton Dulin just flat out delivers every time his number is called, whether it's on special teams or kick return or, a slot receiver, or, running an end around like he did last week, almost scoring a touchdown against the Dolphins. So that's my answer, is you got 2 really good depth pieces. Don't forget about Anthony Gould too. So I guess I got to correct myself. He had 6 wide receivers all up the other day against the Dolphins. So I think that's probably your, outside a cornerback on defense, which I still think is pretty good when everybody's healthy, but it's not as of right now. But when everybody's healthy at that wide receiver spot, the Colts have a lot of options and a lot of guys that flat out aren't going to play a lot, and they're really good football players kind of in the wings.
You know, Matt, so you've worked in the – I'm going to give you an introduction to another queryism, okay? And I've had a lot of success with these. So you've worked in this building, Matt. You know Scott Johnston, right?
Love Scotty.
Okay.
He's his producer.
So, yeah, that's right. So yeah, and you work with him on the Colts radio side. So Scotty Johnston, for those that have not heard me say this before, Scotty Johnston is the guy that every single company needs, and I call it the copier guy. And the reason I call it the copier guy is not because they're the Rob Schneider character from SNL, but because everybody has that situation where you walk past the copier and somebody's standing there dumbfounded, and you're like, what's going on? Like, I don't know, this thing, it's not working. I just need to print something out. It's not working. And so then you say to yourself, well, call Scotty. He'll know how to fix it because Scotty can do everything. He has the answer to everything. He knows where every body's buried, all that. Is Ashton Doolin the Scotty Johnston copier guy of the Colts?
Ashton Doolin is the guy that, like, you're in a world of hurt if he's not. It's like if he shows up sick one day and it's like, oh, crap. Like, we don't even know all the things Ashton Doolin
does.
That's
exactly correct, right? He can do. He can fill like 7 roles, right?
Yeah, he just does them, and nobody even knows that he's doing them.
Right.
And, it's essential business. I mean, that's exactly, who Scott Johnston is. And, I think we all like to think we have a little Scott Johnston in us. We're hard to replace. We got some institutional knowledge about us, right? But I think that's absolutely Ashton Doolin, man. Jack of all trades. He's juggling a lot of balls. He's essential in a lot of different things. He has to go home at night every night and watch like 3 different versions of game tape because of all that he's asked to do and his versatility. So, I mean, he's one of my favorite Colts. I mean, think about it. He's lasted with the Colts for 7 years. He signed multiple contract extensions in free agency. Went to Malone University. Like, that's not even a real place anymore in terms of football. They don't even play football there anymore. So, the average lifespan of an NFL player is 3 years, and it's even less for undrafted guys. And he's just kept, sticking around, made himself necessary, and he's just a great story and just an even better guy. He's one of my favorite Colts of all time.
I'm assuming that you would have to know this because of your job, Matt. So if you know the answer to this, I want you to confess up front. I know the answer because then it's not as fun. Can you tell me the town or the athletic nickname of Malone University?
I can tell you the town. I can't tell you the nickname.
Okay, we're going to guess the nickname. First off, give me the town.
Well, I better be right. I'm 90% sure it's in Canton, Ohio.
Okay. I think that is right, actually. Okay, so I'm going to say, Eddie, I'll let you guess first. Malone is what?
What do you mean?
Okay, thanks. Matt, Matt, how about yourself? Malone is what? What's your guess on the athletic nickname?
I actually know this answer because they're a Division II school.
I'm going to go with Mustangs. Matt, what's your guess?
I'll just stick with the generic Wildcats.
Okay. Eddie?
You ready for the answer?
I am.
The Pioneers.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the
All right.
Pioneers. Well, I guess he was a pioneer in terms of Malone players in the NFL because they shut down the program, right?
I think the only reason I knew that is because I think when he was first picked up by the Colts, I thought through osmosis I heard that he used to play his home games at the Hall of Fame Stadium. So that's how I was able to put that together.
His quarterback, by the way, Charles Ingalls Wilder, interestingly enough. By the way, so Matt Taylor is our guest. Matt, this particular game, I'm curious of this. When you look at what Daniel Jones was able to do in week 1, and he was obviously impressive, and I think Tyler Warren is a big part of that. But I think Shane Steichen should get more credit for the way he called that game to facilitate the strengths of Daniel Jones and not illuminate any weaknesses there. I thought he called a very Daniel Jones-centric game, did Shane Steichen. Would they have done things schematically different if Richardson was the quarterback?
It's a great question. I mean, maybe outside of a couple of design runs by the quarterback, I don't think so. I mean, you had all the different components in the offense with Jones last week that you saw when Richardson was kind of humming last year towards the end of the season or the middle part of the season when after he came back from the 2-game benching. You had the RPO game, you had pushing the ball down the field, you had the deep shot to Pierce, you had kind of the pump fake and go and the great ball on the sideline to Pittman on the touchdown. You had sort of the audible at the line of scrimmage and motion out Josh Downs on a 4th and 2. I mean, this is, I think we talked about this maybe last week or the week before. I mean, aesthetically, it's pretty much the same offense for either quarterback, and I think that was a big reason why, or one of the biggest reasons why they targeted Daniel Jones, is so that they can make it easier on the rest of the offense, no matter who the quarterback is, because aesthetically it's pretty much the same. The quarterbacks have similar skill sets because Daniel Jones, as we saw in the first game, really mobile, can get out of the pocket. So I think the only difference is that you're not going to see, and maybe heck, we might even see it this week. We all know, but towards the end of last year, you were seeing 4 or 5 design runs by Richardson, maybe not so much with Daniel Jones, but everything else in terms of the playbook, was designed for a mobile, athletic quarterback, and both of those guys kind of fit that bill. And I thought it was important for the Colts to do that for the rest of the offense, so they didn't have to, do a drastic 180 like they've done in years past, going from Richardson to Flacco or to Nick Foles or Matt Ryan or Gardner Minshew. I mean, that's a drastically different game plan, different style of offense, and that's a tough swing for the rest of the skill players on offense to deal with. So I think that's a big reason why Daniel Jones is here, and through one game they really executed the big picture game plan pretty flawlessly.
Matt, last week I was talking with Kevin Bowen. I was like, what? I was thinking about this going into week 1. Like the 3 things that we didn't really talk about during training camp. Number 1, we just talked about him, and Astudillo being back, being healthy. Number 2, Josh Downs was healthy going into week number 1 last week against Miami. And number 3, he got overshadowed by just what A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pierce were doing in training camp, and that's Michael Pittman Jr. I felt like nobody was really talking about Michael Pittman Jr. being healthy. In the first week, last Sunday against Miami, 6 catches on 8 targets, 80 yards and a touchdown. Is he back to that 2023 version that we saw from Michael Pittman Jr. within this Colts offense?
Yeah, Eddie, to your point, great observation. I don't want to make any excuses for Michael Pittman Jr. I know that he won't make any excuses either. But, I mean, last year he gutted through a ton of pain, and it was early on in the season too. I think it was like week 3 or 4, that report flared up like he's going to go on IR. He's done for the season. He's going to have back surgery. I mean, not only did he not have back surgery, he never went on IR. And I think the rest of the season from that point on, he only missed 1 game. But he had to go through a lot of different stuff just to get ready for Sundays. I mean, he didn't practice a whole lot during the season last year. Had to receive a lot of treatment, went through a lot of rehab, just to get himself in a position to play. And so, I think all of that kind of reflected in his performance. Again, not making an excuse for him, but I mean, he had 69 catches last year, just a little bit over 800 yards. That's historically a down productive Michael Pittman Jr. type of a season. And to see him go out there and ball and get 80 yards receiving and a touchdown, to your point, Eddie, last week was a great Michael Pittman Jr. game. Stat line wise, he only did what he did on Sunday last season 1 time, right? I mean, only 1 time in 2024 did he have at least 80 receiving yards and a touchdown. So to see him do that right out of the gate, and he's back, he's healthy, he's not dealing with that back thing anymore. He's got that behind him. I mean, he's going to kind of step back into that, true highly targeted go-to receiver for the Colts, their number 1 guy to make a play in crunch time. It was really good to see Michael Pittman Jr. kind of emerge back into that role and play healthy and then have stability at the quarterback position around him.
Matt, when you look at week 1, Matt Taylor, our guest, voice of the Colts and Broncos coming up on Sunday. When you look at week 1, and that was such a dominant, I mean, it's been a while since we've seen the Colts have a game where they just, from the very start, I mean, that game was never in question. And that's a kudos to the Colts. It also may tell us a little bit about Miami. But was there any area at all coming away from that game? We've talked so much about the positives for Indianapolis. What about those areas that might have been a forecast of concern?
Yeah, no, to your point, I mean, you got to get out the microscope to find the negatives. But, I mean, it was pretty close to perfect as you can play in the NFL by modern standards. You win by 25 points. That was the largest margin of victory for the Colts in the game since 2021. So it's been a long, long time since they just kicked the holy you-know-what out of somebody, and it was really refreshing to see. But, there was still some things you got to clean up, right? There was some leakage on some kickoff returns. I think the first kickoff return of the game, a 38-yarder, so some good field position by the Dolphins in that case. And then the biggest one for me is just, I don't want to sound like a broken record because we've been talking about this for the last 3 years, and it's really hard to do. It's easier to say than it is to do because every team in the NFL is dealing with it. It's like bullpen in Major League Baseball. Everybody needs it, but there's not a lot of it, and it's defensive tackle depth. And the Colts are spoiled because they have two of the best ones in the NFL still going in Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner. But the problem is, or the reality is, those guys can't play every down. They can't go 60, 65 plays throughout the course of a game. They got to get their rest. They get nicked up here and there. You're putting in different packages to rush the passer and things like that. But, when those guys are out of the lineup, there's still a little bit of just noticeable difference in being able to stop the run. They're a little bit vulnerable still in the middle of that defense against the run. And then I just think big picture-wise, too, you look at what Miami did on offense last week, which wasn't a lot because they got down early on the scoreboard. They had to throw the ball. They didn't run the ball all that much. They ran the ball for only 72 yards for the game. But if you look at their number of attempts, they were still over 6 yards per attempt. So, that's a little bit, eyebrow raising. It's a little bit alarming, even if it was a blowout type of a game. They got to get that fixed because that'll come back to bite you when you are in a dogfight of a team, when you do have, an offense that's got a good offensive line and a good running back that can kind of slash and find those vision, one-cut runs. That's something they got to get cleaned up. But again, it's tough to find, top-end backup defensive tackle depth because every team in the NFL is searching for those guys.
Matt, as we know, Scott Johnston wears a different sports jersey of a different athlete 365 days a year. He has never worn the same one twice, but if I see him wearing one of Ashton Doolin, I'm going to freak out because my worlds have collided. Easiest way to say it. Matt Taylor, voice of the Colts. You can hear him on Sunday. Matt, we appreciate it as always, man. Have a good call.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right, Matt Taylor joining us on the program. Up next, JMV will be here. We will do the crossover brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com, 317-353-2141. Right now, kind of that crossover between furnace, air conditioning, all of it, getting it up to speed. Love-HVAC.com, your one stop for that. sound you hear is not the bike of Eddie Grant, but rather that is my stomach because J&V is near Hermanaki Wings. And that alone gets the stomach growling for me. John joins us now on the crossover chat here. John, you are getting set for one of the best places to be in Central Indiana.
I am. You should see what I'm showing to Eddie right now in the live feed that's not live. You should look in what I'm showing you right now. It's very S118 back in the day-esque right there. Just call me Tom Byron.
I feel bad for Brent Holverson.
I don't really want to know what's going on there, by the way.
I'm Tom Byron Jr. here. Thank you very much. No, hey, I got a great
belt you got going on there.
Thank you very much, buddy. Hey, we got a special guest for the crossover presented by Love Heating and Air right now. Special guest, talk to Jake.
What's up, Jake? It's Jimmy. How are you, man?
Buddy? Jimmy, what's up, man? Hey, Jimmy, listen. It is not going to be long, brother, before Eddie was just mentioning it. I mean, I think we're only, 6-8 weeks or something from our typical pregame handshake before the Pacer games for good luck, man. I'm fired up.
Love him.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I just wanted to say I'm more optimistic than ever about this new team, and I'm loving it, and I think Matherin's going to take over, and it'll be a fun season.
I love this dude, Jake. He's best. One of the best of all time right here.
Jimmy's whole family, man. He is the absolute best.
Yes.
The Egglesons are great people. Absolutely great. And, John, that's
I kind of look at my family and I go, God, we're just a bunch of dip blanks. What the hell?
John, there are a lot of things about doing this job that we're very fortunate to do, obviously, right? We get to have a lot of fun. But, meeting people like Jimmy and his family and getting to see them at different sporting events and all that, that's what it's all about. Absolutely love it.
All right, buddy. Hey, Jake, man, thank you. The crossover brought to you by Love Heating and Air. We're good to go from the Ale in Fishers, Larceny Bourbon Locks, Luna Azul Tequila Shots, Jake. Week 2 today.
All right, John, I'll have it all for you up next. And I thank you for listening to Query & Company.